Hey everyone, Sunyveil here, and before we get started with episode 18 of FECast, where Stormblessed, Collector, and myself all talk about the Ecq Echoes of Eternity this past week and everything that went down and our preparation leading up to the tournament, I would just like to spend a second to thank our generous Patreons from Patreon.com. These lovely people help make FECast possible, and down the line there might be future initiatives which depend on their support. So huge shout out to Yeastout, D-Dub, Chris Ye, Chemamilk, and Work Done Son for their generous contributions to Friends of Eternal and FECast. Alright, without any further ado, let's get started with episode 18 of FECast, the Ecq Echoes of Eternity recap with Stormblessed and Collector. Hello everyone and welcome to FECast episode 18, where we're going to be recapping the Echoes of Eternity Ecq that happened this past weekend. First off, let me introduce my guests today. We have from Team the Barbarian Camp, we have Collector, who top fours basically every tournament.
Hello.
And Stormblessed, who is apparently right about a lot of things and I should listen to him more.
Hello, this is Stormblessed, and I'm right about a lot of things, and you should listen to me more.
Yeah, Stormblessed predicted that Zenon was going to be good, as well as Rodov Stranger. What else were you right about? Volatility?
Oh yeah, volatility's nuts, and it's underrated even still, but we'll get to that a little bit later, I assume.
Yeah, if you haven't listened to, I don't remember which number it was, but I think it was episode 15 where we previewed Echoes of Eternity, the first one where we previewed Echoes of Eternity. If you go back and listen to it, Stormblessed was right about a lot of things. Oh yeah, and there's that dragon also. I forget the name of the dragon that says, your units go berserk and stay berserk.
Oh, Skylord Tolek. Yes, I said that card was nuts, and then somebody's like, I don't know about that, and, you know, that one dragon deck did really well. On the back of Skylord Tolek, it beat a Reanimator deck, for Pete's sake.
Yeah, so Stormblessed is definitely worth listening to. Alright, as I mentioned earlier, we will be mostly recapping this past weekend's events with the Ecq. But first, let's talk about the new promo card that was spoiled before we get into all this Ecq talk. This one is called Last Light Judgment. It costs 15, and it is one of each of the factions, Fire, Time, Justice, Primal, and Shadow. And its text says, kill everything. Each player discards their hand and loses all of their power. Night falls and never ends. Last Light Judgment costs 3 less for each power that has been decimated this game. So this is going to be a promo. You can get this card just by playing games and winning games these next few days. Well, actually, do we know when the promo period is starting?
I'm not sure, but this should be soon.
It can't be too much longer, because they like to put it out once a month, and the month's almost over, so...
Fair enough. So you'll be able to pick up this card just by winning games. You don't have to enter an event or anything. And, well, let's talk about it. What do you guys think about this card?
I mean, assuming someone can figure the influence out, I think it'll be pretty good. You can use it with Revenge, you can use it with Vargo. You know, it doesn't get rid of your influence either.
I give it like I think there's like a 35% chance it's completely busted. Because Reap exists. You know, that old classic staple Reap, the 0 mana spell that is 0 at a time, and it gives you 3 health, but if you decimate it, it gives you 1 of each influence. So it's a 0 mana way to decimate, which, 5 decimates, this costs 0, and presumably you build the rest of your deck to work well with it. You can just get so much advantage by blowing up everything. Like Waystone Gate, if you play Waystone Gate, play Last Light Judgment, you get an 8/8 in play, your opponent has nothing. That's, pretty good when they have literally nothing, including 0 power and 0 cards in hand. The 8/8 will pretty much end the game very quickly.
That's a good point. There are some relics in the new set that have effects if they die during your turn. Now, they're supposed to trigger when you sacrifice the relic or you use it up, like Waystone Gate, for example, has 3 activations to go get power from your deck. But if it dies on your turn to that effect or any other effect, you will get the 8/8. The other thing, like Collector said, revenge units and entomb cards. Even if you're just getting, I don't know, what's an entomb effect that seems pretty pedestrian but might end up killing someone when you have Last Light Judgment? The first thing that comes to my mind is Bait, the 1/1 that gets a 7/7 flyer.
Yeah, that'll kill some people.
Yeah, but there's got to be something that's better.
Recogulator, that old draft common, killed them with 2/2/1/2 Grenadines.
Yeah, I mean, after you play this, Night Falls never ends. That people are going to be taking damage.
I mean, the best thing to do with it is revenge, right? Because you're drawing extra cards, you're more likely to reach your Mokdos or your Alchemists or whatever.
Yeah. All right, so this one's a really interesting one. It's going to be cool to see if it can be broken. I'm looking forward to the deck that plays like tons of reaps and just tries to reap as many turns as possible. That sounds like it's a lot of fun.
I played against that in the ECQ, so
I also played against that. We both played against the same person. They were playing 5 Faction Reap, and now the deck might actually work. That being said, I think if this card is really degenerate, it might just become really unfun to play against. So if it is exceptionally broken, I wouldn't be surprised if it got nerfed to some capacity.
I'm not sure about that. Like, it's still vulnerable to all the things that big spells tend to be vulnerable to, like negate effects.
Aegis especially.
Yeah, Aegis. Oh yeah, if you have anything with Aegis, you probably just win, right?
No, your opponent. No, because if you remember, Harsh Rule kills your own things with Aegis, but it doesn't kill your opponent's things with Aegis. So the best way to fight against the card is face Aegis and your units having Aegis.
Right, that's what I was saying. So there are definitely ways to counteract this card. It would be really cool if this turns into a deck. I don't think, I don't think that it'll get to the point where it needs to be nerfed, because I think there's enough counterplay in every format in order to deal with it.
I don't like calling for nerfs. I don't like thinking about nerfs. I'm just saying, like there's the possibility that this card does reach that level because it is an exceptionally powerful effect, and it's unique as well.
Okay, well, I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on copies of this card and trying it out and seeing if I can do something wacky with it. Now, let's get on to the main topic for today, Ecq Echoes of Eternity. Congratulations to Tuanbon, who has been, well, a long-time ECQ competitor. You see them top 64ing relatively frequently, and they always seem to be on Tombre aggro from what I can tell, and they finally won, beating me in the semifinals, and then fellow Discord member Keith Peleg in the finals. So congratulations to Tuanbon. One funny thing about their deck list is that it had no new cards from the set.
Yeah, that is kind of crazy. But didn't your list also have almost no new cards except for the market, I think?
I was just playing the 4 non-hits distillation. And was I playing anything in the market? I don't think I was playing anything in the market that had any new cards.
Oh no, I think it was a different deck I saw on the list that was playing the Justice spell to pick up Stand Together.
Yeah.
But yeah, 20 of us in the FE Discord made it to top 64, which is just an incredible number. Like, that's a pretty exceptional percentage of the top 64 being just people in the FE Discord.
Yeah, I mean, the previous ECQ had 21 of us, and 20 this time. Definitely really proud of everyone for that. Congratulations, everyone who had a nice tournament. Congratulations to you two. Collector, you were top 16 and Stormblessed top 32. Congratulations to myself for reaching top 4, I guess.
Yeah, congratulations. Top four is really good, so congratulations
is
there.
top 4 your best finish so far, Sunny? Or?
Top 4 is my best finish, yes.
Congrats.
And also, you made it there on the back, and this would be a nice segue into the ECQ back. You made it there off the back of a Combray sort of aggro-ish mid-range list that you put together the night before. So how did you come to that conclusion to put that together the night before?
Yeah, so let's first talk about the metagame going into the ECQ. We talked about it. We talked about what we expected on last week's cast. I thought that Even Elysian was going to be the deck to beat, and the Boxer and Tempest Dragon King both thought that Carver was going to be the deck to beat. And, I mean, those were the two most represented decks in the top 64. I think that Even Elysian probably had a higher percentage of the field and maybe not as high of a conversion percentage, because I definitely played a lot of Even Elysian going into it.
I know I played about 8 Elysian decks. I think Popotito said they played 18 or 20?
Yeah.
So there was definitely a very large percentage of the field going into before 64.
So in the top 64, about 15% was Carver, and 46% was Even Elysian, which is just almost half. It was 28 decks in the top 64 were even. There was none in the top 8 and above, but in the top 16, 7 of the top 16 were all Even Elysian. That's just, the deck put up numbers. It just so happened that it didn't get there to the very tippy top, but it did get there to top 16, and everything below it, obscene rates. The one thing that ended up being somewhat of a surprise, to me at least, was the proliferance of Touch a Battle, presumably as some sort of mirror breaker in the mirror, but I was surprised at how many people went to the conclusion of Touch a Battle being the way to go, and it was just the better deck. So I was wrong about Touch a Battle.
I think once Gozu did his run of 28-0, everyone saw that Reddit post saying he was running Touch of Battle, then hopped on that train.
Yeah, definitely. We should also give an absolute gigantic congratulations to
Yeah.
Gozu going 28-0.
Oh yeah, he did amazing.
That is an obscene record. Like,
Kind of went 29-0 because his round 1 opponent didn't show up. But no, I mean, actually, well, there's actually multiple groups that made it to that conclusion, right? I think, like, I know, like, Kamado's small group also went to Touch of Battle with a different build. But yeah, so even Elysian just crushed it.
Were they the Yeti Pult guys, or?
I don't know. There was a number of Yeti Pult people too. The fact that Yeti Pult saw play is just baffling to me. There's got to be better cards than Yeti Pult, right? But I guess it's just combination of kills Carvers, kills random X1s, good with Deadly, and then draws cards, which is you can't flood.
yeah, it wasn't on my radar, the Touch of Battle thing going on, but it did pretty well. I mean,
If I make one more comment about the Touch of Battle before we move past it. I think the reason that ended up working out is because I still think the card has a lot of flaws with it, but I think even Elysian mitigates those flaws perfectly. That is to say that Golem draws you into enough cards, so the sort of inconsistency factor is mitigated because you're more likely to draw into your pieces. And then on top of that, even Elysian has just a bunch of random units in play, which is the secondary problem of this, so it kind of is the perfect deck and possibly the only deck that it will fit in perfectly like this. If the deck goes away, I'm not sure Touch of Battle will stay relevant, but it kind of was the perfect storm for the card, and it also cost 2 obviously instead of 3, which you think maybe the overall one would cost 2 and this one would cost 3, but nope.
we gotta make sure that we can put the even combo in the Touch of Battle combo in our even deck. Anyway, so to go back to your question earlier, Stormblessed, of how I arrived on this Cumbre deck, I tried out a lot of things. And I think that the first thing that I identified about both the Even Elysian deck and the Carver decks is that they were pretty soft to flyers. Like, they don't really have blockers for flyers. They have a fair amount of removal, but if you play something like the Great Parliament for 2 Owls, it's really tough for them to deal with a lot of the time. So I knew that I wanted to play the Great Parliament, and there were not a lot of snowballs or Vars favors in the format, so I decided to just be super weak to those 2 cards. And also Sandstorm Titan and Vara. So, like, those are cards that some cards don't see as much play because of the prevalence of those cards. The Great Parliament being one of them, lots of stand-togethers being another. Just basically Cumbre units tend to not do well against all those cards. So I just said, screw it. If someone brings those cards, I'm going to lose to them horribly, but I think it's really good against what most of the field looks like, and that's exactly what happened.
Did you face any Varas or Sandstorm Titans on the way up through the Swiss rounds?
I did. So I went 24-4 in the preliminary rounds. One of them I lost to Reanimator because I miss lethal. Like, it was kind of complicated, but I did miss lethal. And my other 3 losses, one was to a Paladins deck that played all units, and then on 8 power went Merchant for Harsh Rule, and then Harsh Ruled, and I was like ahead on board, and then they like played Svetya or something.
The market Harsh Rule out of aggro decks is always confusing to me.
Yes, no kidding. I forgot what one of my other losses was, but the third loss was to someone that played 3 faction with the display in the Outcast Fortress colors factions, Justice, Primal Shadow.
Purpose, display of purpose?
Yeah, so they played that display, but I mean, what really beat me is they played 3 Varas, and I just couldn't beat that.
I faced 2 classic FJS builds, not Carver FJS, but like regular old FJS, and I was like, oh, I was surprised, but it was still a decent deck. Didn't make any top 64 though. But speaking of other impressive decks, we also had a number of Reanimator players, and they all put up pretty good numbers. So, Collector, why did you take Reanimator to the ECQ?
Well, going into it, I think we had all identified, even Elysian and Carver, some of the best decks. Me and Stormblessed tried, an even Elysian Mirror. I hated it. I did not want to have to deal with that for, probably 20 rounds of Swiss, and then potentially 4 of 6 matches in top 64. So I ruled that out. Carver decks, I was playing them a lot on ladder, and I couldn't quite get them, they were winning more than they were losing, but I couldn't really get them above 60%, where, you want to try to be above if you want to try to win a tournament. So I didn't really want to play that. And then Gallup just starts posting in the Discord that, he's going to start bringing Warrior Reanimator. And it's Warrior because, no burglarize in the market, so we could be super weak to that, to Gaffle. And I just kind of grabbed that because everyone always sleeps on Reanimator for some reason, so it seemed like a good choice to bring.
2 months is just long enough for everyone to forget that Reanimator exists and to stop packing gavels in their market, basically.
Yeah, it was actually on my radar. I noticed that people like Gallop and Days Undoing and that crowd were playing a lot of Reanimator, and I was actually losing to them a bunch with Even Elysian, so I was like, maybe I need some way of fighting this. My deck it didn't have any dedicated hate, but it did have a plan in that matchup, and that was to play Emery's Choice on Teacher of Humility, which usually works out pretty well.
Right. And like in addition to people sleeping on Gavel, like everyone was playing Even Elysian, and most of the Carver builds didn't have a Justice market. So even if they were afraid of Reanimator, they didn't have much they could actually do against it. So
And I heard that you also even beat a Gavel against the Boxer. Would you care to tell us that story?
yeah, that was our top 32 match, I think. That was very interesting. He won game 1, just gavelled me on 4. I couldn't do anything. He combusted both my Black Sky Harbingers. I died. Game 2, I believe I just comboed off before you could do anything to me and killed him. And then game 3, I believe he mulled to 6. He went and gavelled me on turn 4. And then the rest of the game was me going Black Sky Harbinger, I wiped his board, and I did that 2 more times. He answered all of them, and then he was left with just 2 press gangs. I traded 2 creatures with those, then marketed for Waylay to steal all the press gangs, and so he couldn't, revenge them, destiny them. And then I just slowly beat down for 3 points of damage over 7 turns and killed him. I got very lucky he didn't draw anything, so.
Yeah, if anyone has any doubts of how uphill that battle must have been, when you know that one of your cards in your market shuts down basically your opponent's entire strategy, it's just knowing, going into the match knowing that makes it so easy to win. All you have to do is redraw until you hit a merchant, and then immediately merchant for the card that wins you the game, and then you win the game.
Exactly how game 1 went.
Yeah. So that was quite the anomaly, and it resulted in Collector winning. And I have a habit of inviting the Boxer onto shows where the person who beat him was also here. I wonder if that's why he's not here today.
I would like to hear his side of that matchup, because he just drew nothing for so many turns. But
oh my goodness. Well, the Boxer has been getting plenty of good successes in the past few tournaments, so I have no doubt that he's going to be able to continue that.
Oh yeah, he played great.
All right, so Stormblessed, you came to this event with a very unique build. You're going to have to tell us all about, what you played and how you came to playing it and how it matches up against the metagame that you were expecting.
So I played a Volatility FTJ build, a Volatility Creation build, and I threw out all the rules about traditional, creation, and I removed the Grodov Strangers, I removed the Icarias, the Rezons, and I put in Sea of Teeth. So for those of you who don't know, Sea of Teeth is a 7-time spell, which has the text, play 5/1/1 Razor Tooths with Killer, kill all attachments. Basically, I thought I didn't really work on Zenon this much because I only had a week, and I was like, I'm gonna break Volatility. That was my goal, because Volatility is exceptionally powerful. And
for people out there who don't know what Volatility does, can you explain it?
Sure. So Volatility is 2 and a fire for a spell that says draw all of the dragons and spells that cost 5 or more from the top 10 cards of your deck. So it can draw anywhere from 0 to 10 cards with never going to be 10. But if you can get to 16 hits, which is to say that you have 4 play sets of cards in your deck that cost 5 or more that fit its condition, you are more likely to draw 4 cards off of Volatility than 0, which is just, an insane number, right? Paying 2 power to draw 4 cards, which are all going to be gas, because they all are just big haymakers, is just insane. The problem is there's actually very few of those. In Firetime Justice, there's the obvious Zoe and Harsh Rule, and then, those are the 2 obvious parts. And then the new card, Nahid's Distillation, is the 3rd obvious inclusion there, because, it's funny though, you're drawing cards to draw more cards with that play, but it does work out, because you can also just throw them into the market. But the problem is, what do you do with that last slot? Because it turns out there's very few cards that are good there. If you play 8 Harsh Rule FTJ, you'll just lose a bunch of games because the Harsh Rules will just rot in your hand. So I wanted something else that wasn't harsh rule. And I kept looking back and forth to the list. Turns out there's like no good dragons that cost 5 or more. Eclipse Dragon was just kind of bad. And then I stumbled across the Sea of Teeth card in my collection. I was like, this is perfect. It kills all attachments, which is to say it kills obelisks and shrines, and sometimes if your opponent's playing a relic control deck, which I faced in Swiss, it kills those too. And then the 5/1/1s with Killer are just really good because they kill Carvers, you can kill Kato, and then you can kill Kato Shay as well. You can't do that with Predatory Carnosaur. It kills Ikaria, which I did actually a couple times. It's actually a really powerful card, and it's even better when it's a free card off of Volatility. So yeah, so that's sort of the base of the deck. Talir's Favorite is a key part of it as well, because it draws you power and also can activate Distillation, which is really cute. Cat's just, insanely busted. And the Sea of Teeth actually are really synergistic with the deck. If you have Zolta Arcanum in play, the Sea of Teeth will each get you a power. If you can get to 13 power, you can play it and Sword of Unity in the same turn to make a bunch of 2/2 Aegis Teeth. And if you get to 19 power, you can play Sea of Teeth, you can play Sword of Unity, get the sand together, and then Pristine Light the Teeth back to your hand. Which is a play I did about 3 times in the Swiss round, so it's a play that does happen a fair bit. I have no idea if the deck will remain good post ECQ, or if the metagame ever shifts. I think it might just be a well-positioned deck for this one-off thing. It's also very tricky to play, but yeah, so I went in with this very unique Volatility build, because I think the card is extremely busted. It does require 20 cards in your deck, though, basically. That is to say, Volatility and the 16 other cards. But yeah, so that's my Sea of Teeth build. Do you have any questions about it, Sunny, or Collector?
Yeah, I do. What drew you to Time rather than one of the other factions? I mean, I think that Justice is an obvious inclusion because it gives you Harsh Rule, and that seems like a huge part of it. But what drew you to Time?
Nahid's Distillation, basically.
All right.
Because the part that was key about Nahid's Distillation is that you can play it for less than 5, right? Which is the downside to Volatility, is that you can, you're putting a bunch of expensive cards in your deck. So, cards like not Distillation or Thunder of Wings are cards you can play for cheaper than 5, which is why they are pretty synergistic with Distillation. And the more cards that get printed, if we ever get a Dig Through Time, I don't think Full Digital will ever give us that, but if we ever got a Dig Through Time, then, Volatility becomes exceptionally, great, because you can play Dig Through Time for 2. But, Dig Through Time is a Magic the Gathering card that has the mechanic Delve, which is that you can, for every cost, you can pay by exiling a card from your void. So basically, it's just ways to reduce the cost of cards can really improve, Volatility.
Yeah, Volatility is great with cards that say that they're expensive at the top right or top left corner, and can be played for much cheaper, like Last Light Judgment, maybe.
I mean, you could play a Volatility Last Light Judgment deck. Although, if you ever decimated more than 3 times, so when you've decimated for the 4th time, you can no longer grab the Last Light Judgment with Volatility, because of how the way the card works is that once it becomes 3 cost or 0 cost, it can no longer be played. It can no longer be grabbed by Volatility.
Right.
So I wouldn't put it past myself to try that out. Because, playing it early will grab you and just have it in your hand for later, which is what you want. The other problem there, of course, is that if you play Volatility, you're going to have 8 cards in hand. And so playing Last Light Judgment will feel pretty bad because you'll have to discard them all.
Well, maybe it helps you find your combo pieces.
If you like discarding cards from your hand at the end of your turn, my deck is the deck to play. Because boy, oh boy, will you discard cards from your hand at the end of the turn. There have been so many,
It's true.
It's very rare, but, if you draw 6 cards off Volatility, which did happen once, although it's like a 1 in 1,000, you'll just have to discard. If you draw, 2 Zoes and a Nahid's Distillation, that's 5 cards in your hand, you gotta discard. Distillation becomes unplayable, in the late game, because I just have so many cards in hand. So, if you like having cards in hand, this is a deck to play.
How about if you like dying while having cards in hand? That seems...
It's even better.
No, because that's the thing, is that, the deck is packing removal and harsh rules, and it's packing 4 torches and 4 defiances. And so, you keep a hand with torch and defiance to get through the early game, you play merchant to pick up, another harsh rule, or Sword of Unity, or Predatory Carnosaur, depending on the matchup. And, you can just survive long enough to just use the Sea of Teeth to slowly, bite at your opponent forever. So yeah, there's always more places to explore in deck building, and, people don't explore enough, especially with obviously great cards like Volatility.
Ladies and gentlemen, Stormblessed. All right, so 2 more decks I want to talk about. The first is the Carver Deck. There were several variations of Carver decks. The Stone Scar version, the version that splashed Justice for Crown Watch Press Gang and Display of Ambition. Yeah. And the Time deck that Tempest Dragon King played. And to me, it felt like, I guess there was also the deck that almost played. That was a sick one. The Taller Combo Carver deck.
Yep.
I think that... I mentioned earlier that I invited the Boxer on is because I would have liked to hear his take on Carver decks and exactly the ins and outs of why he built the deck the way he did. I think that's something that struck me. This is off the top of my head, so apologies if I get this wrong. There was only one shrine in that deck. It was just in the market, and that makes a lot of sense. Like, it seemed like he was just trying to grind out the game and get to the point where he has a lot of resources, and then the shrine kills the opponent from whatever life total.
Yep, I have his list in front of me, and yep, he only had the one on the market, which is what we were doing as well on Barbarian Camp side.
Yeah, did anyone else from your team play the Carver deck?
No one. No, wait. No, Jock D did, right?
Oh, yeah. Jock doesn't speak a lot, so I sometimes forget, what he brings. But yes, he brought Stone Star Carver.
All right. And one comment about Carver decks and even decks. Someone went through and tallied all of the wins and losses that these decks had over the course of the top 64, and both Carver and Even Elysian just had abysmal win records. It was like 30-something.
Even Deadly Elysian had like a 56% win rate.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it might go to illustrate something that in Throne, if there's a best deck, like, it might not be a great pick for the ECU. I mean, it depends on what your goal is. Like, if you're just trying top 64, I think it's probably fine. But as far as actually winning a tournament, it seems like playing the level 1 best deck, level 1 being, like, just what is good based on power level right now, it might not be a good strategy to play the level 1 deck at Throne tournaments, because we saw this and like the last tournament, the best decks going into the tournament didn't do so well.
I'd also argue that even Deadly Elysian wasn't really a level 1 deck. It was like a level 1.5 deck, because it was a deck that wasn't known to everyone, and it was a deck that, groups of people, teams brought that had built it among themselves, which is why there was so many different variations of the same concept. So it was a little bit different than just the standard level 1 deck, which is also, again, why it did so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you bring the deck which everyone expects, like, you'll probably do well, because, there is a reason why everyone's expecting it. It's a good deck, but you will most likely run into people who either teched or built specifically to try to beat your strategy. So, you might be lucky enough to dodge them and go all the way, but, you have to be lucky enough to dodge them. So
yeah, and that's what you and me did. You and I? Yes, you and I. Anyway.
All of us did that, really.
I guess so.
Look, Sea of Teeth kills Obelisk, and then you can kill all of their random 1/1s and 2/2s that are left over.
They play a lot of, like, 3/3s, too.
Well, then I kill 3/3s, and then I just have... Or I have chump blockers.
In any case. One thing that I want to append to... this whole maybe don't play level 1 decks at these big tournaments is it might be fine to do in Expedition. More limited card pool, fewer opportunities for counterplay. I think that it might just be fine to play the best deck in Expedition, but it's not a good idea in Throne. You look at the 2 Expedition ECQs we've had so far, and they were both won with the deck that was the consensus best deck, with Cultists in the first one and Argenport in the third/second one, the second Expedition ECQ this season.
Yep, Expedition is kind of like, for those who play Magic, just to correlate it, like standard of Magic, where the card pool is so limited that even if like everyone's identified the best deck, there's not often a lot you can do to counteract that while still being good against a lot of other things.
Yeah. Okay, on to the last deck that I want to recap for the ECQ, and that is Keith Peleg Zenon, almost taking it down. Keith Peleg, a member of the Discord, shows up usually a little bit before ECQs to talk strategy. Played a really innovative Zenon deck, and let me just bring this up. Here we are. It's kind of a ramp deck. It plays Initiative Sands, Devotee of the Sands, Trailmaker, and Aurelian Merchant in order to get to its big haymakers,
And Tokos, right?
Yeah, and Tokus. In order to get to its big haymakers, Makar Stranger, Grodov Stranger and Dizo's Office. And, I mean, the power level of Makar Stranger and Grodov Stranger is really high, obviously, but they haven't seen a ton of play in... Well, they didn't see a ton of play leading up to the ECQ, and I think that was in large part due to Even Elysian and Carver decks being pretty good against them, but Keith Peleg made it all the way to the finals with this build. I think they were also the only person playing this deck. Either of you two have some commentary on this one?
Yeah. I mean, I said that, you know, I'm sort of known for loving Zenon because I think the deck is always underrated. Even now, I thought it was underrated because the Ancestor Strangers were just completely busted, and Carver I thought was only going to have like a 15% showing at the ECQ, so I thought the deck wasn't a bad choice to bring. I just personally focused on volatility over Zenon this time, and my initial efforts weren't as promising, so I sort of gave up on the deck more or less. But I figured there had to be a good build of it somewhere because the cards are just absolutely insane. And it seemed like Keith managed to find the specific line.
Yeah, I guess it's really just all in on the Strangers. There's nothing really threatening about the deck until you get to the 5-drop Makar Stranger and 6-drop Grodov Stranger. And, well, I mean, both those can win a game on their own if they're given enough time.
That kind of folds to Waylay if you think about it.
Its best strength is that it can put out a Makar Stranger on turn 3, which, if it does that, it's really executing its game plan. But I'd really like to know how he managed to beat all the Even Elysian decks, because if he doesn't get to do that, I imagine he drops that, then they just go Equivocate, hit you for 10, and I don't know how he wins from there.
Yeah. Also, I mean, having so many Grodov Stranger seems, and so much ramps, just seems fantastic against the Reanimator decks.
Tokos doesn't prevent weapons, right?
Correct.
Okay. So it doesn't prevent... It prevents Equivocate on your own units, though.
Yes, for how often that comes up.
Well, I think the thing that prevents that is pretty relevant is you can't Temple Tactic your own Even-Handed Golem to draw 2 more cards.
Yeah.
When I was playing the Even deck, I that was a line of play that I would make very frequently.
Yeah, that is true.
I mean, and especially the Even decks that aren't running Sand Warrior, they don't always put up the incredibly fast tempo wherein it starts, giving the Zenon player enough time to get through it. Especially because, he had some removal, and Killer works pretty good on even a Tokos versus Elysian, so... Yeah,
and Killer on Grodov Stranger is obviously very good, getting to draw the 2 cards immediately. Alright, so, I think that all of our attention is going to be on Expedition coming up, but for the people that are interested in playing Throne going forward, what do we think the metagame is going to look like?
Well, I'm hoping we see a Golem nerf. I'm not one to call for nerfs, because I think that's best left to the people that have the data and are, designing the game. So people call for Carver nerfs or Kato nerfs, and I'm not going to call for any of those. But I think Golem, at least in my opinion, is unfun to play with and unfun to play. It's unfun to play against, and it, will always get better and better, right? They nerfed Endra for Golem sins in a sense. They nerfed it for its own sins, but a big reason they nerfed it to 3 was that it couldn't fit in a Golem. The problem is that there's always going to be good cards printed at every cost, and so there'll always be another good card printed at 2 or 4 or 0, and so Golem will always come back. If they nerf Spellshaper to 3, it takes Even Elysian out for now. Well, it's going to come back when the next good 2-cost card comes into play. So I think it's just correct to sort of bite the bullet and nerf it to some extent. What do you think, Collector or Sunny?
I agree. The longer it exists, the longer the game exists, the more powerful even things will be to do. I would like to see it either put to a 4-mana 3/3 or 4-mana 4/4. That way you can't use it. Because one of its biggest strengths is to be able to just play it on 2, keep a really iffy hand, because you're always going to be guaranteed 2 power. And so just play on 2, draw 2, and you'll generally recover from not having your mana if you did that, or sorry, not having your power if you did that. But assuming it costs 4, you can't just go turn 2 that, turn 3 that, and just be completely set up. You have to make sure you are able to hit your power drops.
Yeah, I also expect a Golem nerf. Some people are talking about nerfing the cards around it, but it's going to come back to Golem being a problem somewhere down the line. I expect it to be increased to 4, be a 4/4 or 3/3, and still draw 2 cards. I think that's the most likely thing to happen. I actually think that when we were looking at this set, there just seemed to be a lot of cards that were super duper powerful and that I thought might be ban-worthy, but certainly based on the Throne power level, I don't think that any of the cards in Echoes of Eternity actually need to be nerfed, which is a testament to how well they balanced the set, I think. I think that there's definitely cards that make an impact in Throne, but I don't think there's anything that's just, busted.
I agree. I think that someday, maybe 3 years down the line, Hopefully Eternal survives that long, and I want it to. But if 3 years down the line, I could see a card like Volatility eventually being nerfed, but currently Volatility is not too powerful.
Yeah. They really did a good job of the power level for this set. And I think that one other thing I should mention is that none of us have really played Expedition, where these cards are probably going to have a bigger impact, and there might be something akin to the cultists or like the smugglers pre-nerfs that might be dominating smaller formats, if you will. We'll see next week or the week after when we get around to talking to Expedition after we've all played a bunch.
Yeah, I've heard some grumblings about Kato in the format, but a lot of the brewers haven't really gotten to Expedition yet because they've all been busy for the Stone ECQ. So we'll see how things shake up once everyone switched their attention to it.
Yeah, and some people said that Carver is Skull Clamp on a stick. At least in Throne, I thought it was fine. I mean, you have to play the card immediately. Like, there's a pretty big downside to Carver. You also have to exhaust it. It's vulnerable to removal. And I don't know, just Throne is so tempo based. Doing something that's proactive ahead of your opponent is just like, I don't know. I think that's where the game is in Throne more often than not.
And I don't think that Madness is an Expedition, so I don't think you can Madness with Carver in Expedition, thankfully.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll definitely get back to that. Any other cards that you think might be nerfed? Because off the top of my head, I can't think of any. I could see like lots of different cards being buffed, but it's a shot in the dark to try to guess which cards are going to be buffed.
Yeah, I mean, I could maybe see some draft cards being buffed or slightly nerfed. Like they don't really have much of an effect on constructed. But as far as like from a Throne perspective, I don't really see much aside from something in Golem getting hit. Hopefully Golem, but
they should buff Breath of Oprex to either deal 6 damage to a unit or 6 damage to the enemy player. And finally, we'll see play if it could do 6 damage. I'm fairly confident of that.
That's interesting.
I'm not. I'm joking. I'm trolling you. Come on. It's a terrible card, and everyone knows it's terrible. Come on.
Well, I mean, there comes a point where it's actually not bad. Like, if it says deal 25 damage,
yes.
Then yes, it's good because it kills anything.
I think that point is 8 or 9.
Play Bladerang and it does 10.
Yeah, but they have to play Blader. You're playing 2 bad cards to make one card slightly less bad.
Details.
Bladerang will always have a soft spot in my heart.
I think if Breath of Oprex did 8 or 9, it would probably be playable. Below that, it's just unplayable.
Yeah. Okay.
But this is not a Breath of Oprex podcast.
Yes.
Where's ambivalent?
Okay, so I guess we didn't answer the second half of the question, which is what do we think the metagame is going to look like going forward? I think that this Combrei deck is going to be pretty good, and if the Combrei deck starts showing up a lot more, we're back to Vara being good, the removal heavy decks like FJS being pretty good. Any other directions you see the format going?
That all sounds reasonable to me. Like, as always, I don't think Reanimator will be much of a force on ladder, just because I don't know why, but no one ever seems to try to tear up ladder with Reanimator. So, that's going to be there. Carver decks will still be a thing, but I think that people will probably go more towards Boxers, where they have the Fire Justice Merchant, along with only one shrine in the market, because you really don't need more than that.
I think that it kind of also depends. I think that there'll be a sort of a slightly weird metagame where people are playing still can be tons of Elysian unless everyone somehow got bored of it. Until about early March, where we see what Direwolf actually is deciding to do with the patch notes or not. And then if Direwolf does nerf Golem, then there's the whole new world. And if they don't, then I think even Elysian will still be king of the day because everyone's always going to play sort of the tier 1 aggro deck. And even Elysian's always going to be good no matter what. So.
Oh, the other thing is that I think that the Zenon deck is probably has a lot of tools to fight against Combrei if Combrei becomes more popular. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a lot more of that Zenon deck. Or similar looking Zenon decks.
Right, like the aggro versions of Combrei, like Tokus shuts down all of their pump aside from Stand Together. So, it's very good in that respect.
And Zenon could also tech in Varas or Sandstorm Titans if necessary.
Yeah. Alright, cool. Let's talk about Expedition. Does any of us know anything about Expedition? Because I have not... I don't think I've played a single game of Expedition since the new set dropped.
I've played some Flyers. I played 1 game of Strangers, and that's about it for me.
I played literally 1 game since the new set dropped, mainly focusing on Thrones, so...
Yeah, but the next ECQ is Expedition, and we also have the first of the quarterly tournaments, the Spring Quarterly on March 6th to 8th, which will be the first Expedition tournament, where the winner will get 75 quarterly championship qualifying points or whatever, the QCPs, and that allows them to get 3 buys in the quarterly event. It's an interesting tournament because since there's no like big prize on the line, it's be interesting to see if people actually like try to brew for it, or if they'll play like a level 2 deck and keep their best deck in their pocket, and how the tournament will shake out as far as the expedition landscape goes.
Yeah, that should be fun. I've been calling for ECQ format tournaments for a while, and it looks like this is exactly what we're getting. So I'm super excited about the existence of this, and it being a lower stakes tournament. Like, I'm always, grinding and trying to find the best deck, the best tech to play for these tournaments. I might play something that I think is not as good, but is more fun. Like, Strange Combo is mostly legal in Expedition, right?
You know what isn't legal Expedition though? Like, any portion of my ECQ deck. I looked and I was like, can I converse with him? Like, I might be able to. And I was like, literally, chants just seek power, whatever. It's like, it's just a chant. In my deck, the chant doesn't get decimated all that much. So, it's not that big of an improvement. But in my deck, it's literally just chant, Talir's favored, volatility, and distillation. Everything else is throne only.
They massacred my Yetis.
Okay, I know what I'm playing. I'm going to be playing Reap Last Light Judgment.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's the first deck I want to play.
I will join you on that.
We will all tear up ladder. Just
is Nick Detraxian legal? Can we play Swap Meet?
No, Nicotraxine is a campaign card, sadly.
You disappoint me, Stormblessed.
Are there no campaign cards legal in Expedition this time?
Not currently.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
We'll see if they change it up in the middle.
Yeah, I have no idea what's even legal in Expedition. We'll probably have some more information for you out there who are looking to play Expedition, probably next week or something, I guess.
I've heard that Zenon Strangers is really good, and I expect that to be really good. The first version of Strangers I made was basically almost entirely Expedition legal. Carver's going to be really good. Majestic Skies is going to be good, and there's going to be like an unseen deck with Master's Blade that probably will also be pretty good. Those are sort of the 4 decks I peg as sort of level 1 decks in the format.
All right. That's a good starting point. I'll try to find deck lists for all of those if we can, and post it in the show notes. So if anyone is looking for a place to start off with, we've got them covered. All right, that about wraps it up for us today. Did I miss anything, or are we good to go?
I think we're good to go. What about you, Collect? Do you have any final thoughts?
The Barbarian Camp is looking for a few more members. If you think you'd like to be on a competitive team, and you think message Valakut number 0001, so the 3 zeros and a 1 on Discord, and with why you'd like to be on the team, and we can maybe talk about it a little bit. You wanted to thank your Patreon people, right?
Absolutely. FECast and Friends of Eternal is made possible by all of our generous patrons. If you would like to help contribute to FECast, the Piloting Club, any future projects that the Discord might put on, you can find us at patreon.com/Friends of Eternal. I'd like to thank the following patrons for their generous support for this week's episode: D-Dub, Work Done Son, Yeast Out, Chamomilk, and Chrissier. You guys help make FECast a thing, and I am very appreciative of it. Thank you so much for contributing.
Finally, I'd like to mention that you should join the Discord, because it's a great place to be for talking all things Eternal with a wholesome community, and we have high level discussion, helping with decks, helping with theory, and we also have the fabulous Piloting Club, which is put on by the esteemed even-handed Chamomilk, and every week we decide on a deck to play, and then you record some videos, submit them, and then you get to discuss the various lines of play to help improve your piloting skill as a player.
Yeah, it's a great tool for helping improve your game. I personally try to get to everyone that posts a video of their gameplay each week, and yeah, I think that it brings up a lot of things that you don't necessarily think about when you're playing all the time, and I think it really helps people get better, so be sure to check that out. And one other comment while we're on the topic of Chamomilk, I heard that someone actually top 64 this ECQ with Chamomilk's exact list from...
I played them round 1, actually. It was the exact same list with 0 changes from the quarterly. No Echoes of Eternity cards, just the exact same list. Chamomilk was pretty happy that, his list is still decent enough to top 64 in ECQ.
Yeah, he really shaped the meta of this one. Because it wasn't on our radars before the last ECQ, right? Chamomilk was like, I think I'm going to play this Even Legion deck. And I was like, is that going to be good? And they made the finals. It was great.
Before the quarterly, the even deck wasn't a thing, and then after the quarterly, Chamomilk basically destroyed ladder with golems.
And in the next week or so, we might see that come to an end. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of FECast, Collector and Stormblessed. It's great to have you two, as always.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for allowing me to come on.
Yep, I haven't had many words.
And thanks to everyone out there listening to this. I hope you enjoyed it. Tell your friends if they play Eternal. If they don't play Eternal, tell them about Eternal. The game's great. I was at DreamHack this past weekend and trying to sell people on Eternal. And I think I actually managed to sell at least one person. Anyway, yeah, that'll be all for this week. Next week, I think we're probably going to be talking about Draft, and then we'll probably end up talking about Expedition before the quarter. Anyway, thanks again for listening. That'll be all for us. Until next time, we will see you in the friend zone. Friends of Eternal is awesome, but you know what's even more awesome? Our amazing patrons over at patreon.com. That's right, Friends of Eternal now has a Patreon where you can help support the content and initiatives of Friends of Eternal. If you enjoy FECast and you enjoy the Piloting Club and you want to join the people that make all this possible and sustainable, be sure to head over to patreon.com/Friends of Eternal and consider donating. Every little bit does help. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time on FECast.